This is Barbara from Second Wind EB-5, and in today's video, what we're going to do is to discuss what are induced and indirect jobs in EB-5 process. And we're going to do it together with Matt Hogan, who is Vice President of Project Development in one of the largest and the oldest regional centers in the US. Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to join you today. To tell you a little bit about CMB, and I appreciate that introduction. We were one of the original regional centers. We've been working in the EB-5 industry now for over 25 years. We've worked with over 6,000 clients from 104 different countries. And so we are a group that's very proud of the success we have and the success that we've been able to deliver to our clients in this industry.
Thank you. So EB-5 required creation of 10 new jobs. And if we talk about direct EB-5, it's kind of clear. You have to hire 10 new employees. It's easier said than done, but still it's clear. When we talk about a regional center option, one of the advantages using the regional center option is actually possibility to count induced and indirect jobs. But it's always creates so many questions. What are they? So Matthew, how would you explain to our listeners what are indirect and induced jobs?
Yeah, well, you said it very well. The biggest advantage to making an investment through the regional center program is that you get to use economic modeling tools to forecast job creation that results from the development and construction activities on the project that you've invested into. So when we talk about jobs, we can talk about jobs that are created directly. And those are the jobs where you're hiring an actual construction worker who's on site. Or let's just say you've developed a restaurant. That might be employees that are working at the restaurant. Those would be direct jobs. The US government, for EB-5 purposes, as you've mentioned, requires that each EB-5 investor create 10 new American jobs. And so the burden of proving those jobs when you're talking about direct jobs is to provide I-9s, W-2s, and citizenship forms. So tax documentation and citizenship forms to prove that you've created those 10 jobs and they're held by lawful American employees. It can become very complicated because you may have a business that needs to reduce its employment staff in order to function properly. You look at challenges such as faced by the COVID pandemic, businesses struggled. They might have had to lay off employees temporarily. Well, in EB-5, that can cost an investor their immigration opportunity. So when you invest through the regional center program, you have the ability to model what they call indirect and induced jobs. And essentially what happens is the US government, through the Department of Commerce and the Bureau of Economic Analysis, they produce multipliers, and they allow you to use economic modeling tools such as InPlan, RIMS2, or REDINE that allow you to study the spending that takes place on a particular project. So let's say, for instance, I'm building an office building. So if I'm building an office building, I'm going to need steel, I'm going to need concrete. I am going to hire employees that will work on site, that will actually build the actual project. I'm going to hire, staff electricians and plumbers and all of those groups that will come in to complete the overall project. And all of those items have an expenditure associated to them. What indirect and induced jobs allow you to do is look at that spending, apply the multiplier provided by the US government, and that allows you to forecast job creation as a result of that spending on those trades. And so instead of counting the individual person, what you're actually counting is the economic impact that your spending has on the economy. The indirect jobs that result from that are the fact that you're building an office building, but you're actually providing job creation for plumbers, for people manufacturing steel and implements to construction and concrete and things of that nature that allow the project to actually be completed.
Matthew, and when we're choosing the project, how you actually forecast the exact number which this project going to create? Let's say you guys working with the office construction, as you said. As a regional center, what you do to estimate this number of jobs which this project is going to create?
Perfect question. That'll allow us to bring this all into focus. What happens is we're looking at the actual construction budget for the project. And so our economists internally will categorize each of those expenditures. They'll apply the specific multiplier, and that multiplier will explain how many indirect and induced jobs are created from that spending. Now, in order to prove that spending, unlike having to provide tax documentation and things of that nature, all you really have to show at the end is the construction project actually expended the EB-5 financing, the EB-5 funding on those actual construction line items. So your inputs to the project up front are estimates, and to prove those jobs, you just have to show the actual expenditures that have occurred and how that translates to the job creation through the economic modeling tools.
And how do you show these expenditures which happened on the project? So it's a stage of 8 to 9 petition. And like as a regional centers, what documents you have to provide to make sure that USCIS is happy with the spending which happened?
Yep, you're essentially collecting receipts. You're collecting ledgers of expenditures. You're collecting receipts for those expenditures, bank statements that show that those funds were paid for out of the funds that have been aggregated for the project, the EB-5 funds and other available funds that were used to complete that project. What your regional center will do is they'll compile that information, they'll complete their economic analysis report, and they'll create a template that you can file at the I-829 stage that holds all of those receipts, ledgers, and accounting information related to those expenditures. And that's essentially what you file to the US government in order to prove the job creation at the I-829 stage.
Okay, but I assume it's not happening that you just like getting to work when collection of receipt, when the time comes to 8 to 9 submission. I assume that once you collected money and money invested in the project, you have to do something to make sure that by time when 8 to 9 is submitted, you have all the documents in place. What policies your regional center used to make sure that it's happening?
Yeah, and that's great. I'm glad you asked that question because that gets to the heart of overall compliance on a project. So CMB in-house, we have a construction compliance department. And so each month as the project progresses, we're collecting all of the spending information. So the borrower is taking draws of funds to complete the project, and they're providing reporting back to CMB and to any other lenders that might be associated to the project. And so each month we're actually collecting that project as the project progresses. So what that does is, first and foremost, it allows us to ensure that the project is continuing to progress the way that it should. But it also means that we're going to have the actual information in hand all along the way. So when you get to the end of the project, all you're doing is compiling that information and starting your analysis and being able to build the information that will be sent to the government. So the key is, again, collecting it along the way, making sure that you constantly have your eyes on the project, that you have people on the ground that can see what's happening, that can report back, and that can tell you what's happening in terms of construction spending, but then also receiving all of that documentation monthly and ensuring that you have everything that you need in order to file those petitions at the end.
Matthew, have it ever happened in your regional center that you were not able to prove the job creation for your projects and investor lost their possibility to get their green card?
No. So we've actually, we're one of the regional centers that we've now done almost 80 EB-5 investment partnerships. And we've never had a project denial. And we've never had a project denied or an investor denied at the I-829 stage for the inability to create all the jobs necessary for them to get their conditions removed. All of our projects have always been able to create the jobs. And the reason for that is actually pretty simple. So I mentioned when you start this process, you actually work with the developer. You're underwriting that project similar to the way a lender would underwrite that project, in that you're making sure all the components of construction are there. The financing to complete the project are there. You have completion guarantees from the borrower. You have a trusted general contractor who's going to be working on that project. You might have bonds or insurance that cover the project in case of any, disasters or
That's a whole separate topic.
exactly, whole separate category. But what all those things do is they ensure that at the end of the day, that project's going to be completed. And if that project's completed and all of that spending occurs, you're going to have the job creation. So provided that you have a project that checks all of those boxes, that it's fully permitted, there's no challenges to the project that would prevent it from moving forward, you're going to have a project that will be completed. And provided that you're conservative in how you've forecasted your job creation, you should always be able to sleep well at night with a regional center that has been consistent and has been conservative, such as CMB, because you'll know that that project will be completed and the jobs will be completed.
I hope it was interesting and useful. Thank you for your time, Matthew.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fantastic.
Thank you. And if you guys want to learn more about EB-5, please check our previous videos, hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.